Record on this computer.
Okay.
Hey, Miguel Iturrate, back here on the MMA Museum podcast, and I am more excited than I've been in a long time for an interview. We've been a little bit of a hiatus, and what better way to come back than with the happy warrior, Roxanne Modafferi. I know Roxanne pretty well. She fought a few times in the Bulldog rotation, and prior to that, with hook and shoot and things like that. And we're talking about one of the most dedicated athletes I've ever seen, men or women in this sport, and also really from the women of the early days, maybe one of the probably the lady who extended her career the most, who got the furthest, and probably had the longest UFC run of the early people who fought in the 2000s still. You know what I mean? So, a landmark interview. I think we're about 2 years removed from her retirement. I think your last fight was February 12th of 2022, and we're taping on the 17th of February 2024. So 2 years. She's got some personal things going on. I'll let her decide if she's going to announce them here or talk about them here. But Roxanne, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Things are good.
It's fantastic to catch up with you. And so let's take it from the top. You're originally from the Massachusetts area, is that correct?
I grew up in Pennsylvania and then went to high school and college in Massachusetts. So I kind of started MMA in Massachusetts. Yeah.
Okay. And who were your early influences? How did you come across the sport, and how did you become enamored with it that you started training back in the dark ages, especially for like women's MMA?
Well, I'd done judo, and then my judo buddies encouraged me to try jujitsu, and then they invited me over to watch the UFC, and then it kind of started from there. When I got into my freshman year of college, I found an MMA gym and did a lot of grappling, and then just got into the UFC from there. And I thought I didn't really think that I wanted to be in the UFC, obviously, because I was just starting out. I just wanted to try fighting. I did a lot of grappling tournaments, and then when I did end up, excuse me, getting a few fights in Japan, then I made my goal like, okay, someday I want to be in the UFC.
Wow, cool. So now talk about those early days. Who was the gym? What was that? Keurig gym?
Yep, Keurig Gym, New
Oh,
England submission fighting, I think.
okay, so it's Keurig Jennis, who a Massachusetts legend, and that's good people that you ran into first. That's an early day. Tell us a story from back in the early days, because he had a roster in the early days of some guys that should be remembered.
I just felt really included. I think I was the only girl, but people didn't baby me. They didn't beat me up, but it was really good that they still went seriously with me, and it was just fun training with the guys. Keurig and Kip,
Yeah,
invited
Kip
me to
Kolar.
the Naga tournaments, and I didn't really pay attention to other people's careers too much. I think I found a Ring of Combat fight card, and there were all these famous people that were on it, including me. I was like, oh my gosh, I had no idea I fought on the same card as these people. I don't think it was Aaron Riley. It was somebody that was like really famous. Um,
Okay.
but just that kind of thing. It was
Now,
funny.
now, by the time you got to Ring of Combat, now that I should be able to find, right?
Oh, I jumped ahead a bunch of years on that one, but
So, talk about your early grappling experiences at Naga, because again, there are grappling tournaments, but from the early days, you basically had Naga and Grappler's Quest were kind
yep,
of like
yep.
the bigger ones, and the ones
Hmm.
that were the best runs. So, what talk about that first time you competed? Who do you remember the opponent? Do you remember the match? What was your
Oh,
memory of that?
I was just a baby blue belt, I just went out there. I didn't always win, I it was the women's division. There weren't enough of us to have all these weight classes. It was like the women's division. And if there were no women who showed up, I would, go in the men's division. But
Oh,
that only happened a couple times.
okay.
Usually there was at least one other girl who was there. And I remember this. What was it? I was irritated about something. One big girl always just used her muscle on me. She was like 200 pounds, and I was mad every time I had to fight her. It's like, this isn't fair. But no, it was fun. I don't remember anybody. I just
Okay.
have some pictures. I could probably like stalk them and find out who they are. But I wasn't really like a super whiz, and I didn't fight any super famous people. It was just fun and get an experience.
And that is cool because, like, in those days, a blue belt, you could be outclassed, but you could also outclass a lot of people because a lot of people showed up with a lot less skill, back in those days, So it was definitely
Yeah.
hit and miss. And like what you said, we were talking to Shayna Baszler, and she used to go to a Holiday Inn to do fights, and they would start out boxing with boxing gloves, but they wouldn't tie the boxing gloves on. And if they threw the boxing gloves off, it would be grappling in the middle of the fight.
Really? Dang. I wasn't even part of that.
so
Wow.
so yeah, they're definitely there's some dues paying. Now, did you ever get discouraged? And I know, let me ask you a little bit about your parents too, because one of the things I remember was that you weren't somebody that was encouraged to do this by your family. Like your parents were against it.
They were for it until they realized I was getting punched in the face. So all of the grappling tournaments, jiu-jitsu, judo, they were all for it. My mom drove me hours to New York to go to this famous gym, Jason Morris's, and they're all for it. But I knew they didn't want me to get punched in the head because it's bad for your brain. I knew this, right? So grappling was fine. And then when I decided to try MMA, I didn't tell them for 3 fights. I told them I had a competition coming up. They're like, "Oh, good luck on your competition." They thought it was jujitsu. I let them think that. And then when I realized like I really did like MMA, I said, I'm actually getting hit in the head. It's, MMA, but I'm really careful. I just take them down. Like I tried to downplay the fact I was getting hit in the head. Um,
Now,
and
if I
then they were
remember
not
correctly,
happy.
yeah, but I remember
But
correctly, your parents are like professional people, like they're, education, everything like that. So how did they
yeah,
take it? They not happy, right? Describe
no,
what not
they
happy means.
my mom never told me to stop. They were parents who wanted to encourage my dream. They could tell it meant a lot to me. So they were trying to like be supportive parents. But at the same time, they didn't like it. So I think my dad was the most like, I don't know if he ever told me not to do it. He started sending me newspaper clippings of boxing articles where boxers getting concussions and getting CT and all that. So they never told me to stop, but they gave me like you should be careful when you're gonna retire, like all that. So it's okay. It was the best case scenario. What parent really wants their kid to get hit in the head? So
Well, yeah, no, that's good. I mean, they obviously cared about you. But you kept pursuing your dream. Now, at some point, it looks like your first official professional fight, at least on Sherdog, was in Japan. You fought in Smack Girl. So
yep.
talk about you went to college. Talk about how that eventually winds up with you going to Japan, because I visited you in Japan one time, and it wasn't just like you're going over to Japan. You were living there, apartment, job, speaking Japanese, teaching English at a school. The whole thing. So that's a different ballgame that I went over there for 3 months and at lived at a dojo and trained and then came home. With everything taken care of. You lived a life over there. How talk about that transition?
Well, when I first went there, it was for a junior exchange program in college, and I managed to get 3 fights during that 10-month period. And then I went back to America, graduated, got a job in Japan, and that's when I moved to Japan full time for 8 years. Yeah.
Wow. So now let's look at this here. So your first fight, according to what I have here, is Hikaru Shinohara on
Yep.
Smack Girl 7. Talk about first how'd that fight come. You were training at the dojo. Now as a gaijin, there's probably some politics involved in getting you the fight and stuff like that. What was the treatment like? Did you actually get to sign the contract for the first fight? Who helped you with that?
Oh my gosh. So I went into the gym. It was the school year. So I arrived in September and I chose Crosspoint Kichijoji. I forget why the reason is. Oh, I probably looked it up on MMA.tv, the underground. I heard it was a good gym. Walked in there. Um, I found out their grappling classes, kickboxing classes. And then I told the teacher, someday I would like to do MMA. Have I ever trained it? I was trying to think because I know we did wrestling, grappling, and then kickboxing. I don't know if at Keurig gym we ever like put the gloves on and sparred. I don't think we did. at that time. So I was like, all right, I'll get some training in and then I'll fight. So I told the guy in like September, I want to someday I want to do an MMA fight. He was like, okay. And then like 4 weeks later, he was like, hey, so you want to fight Hikaru Shinohara in Mackerel? I was like, what? Like, have you even been watching me train? Am I good enough? Am I okay? Like, is this fine? He was like, yeah, yeah, yeah. But what I didn't know was that I was the perfect candidate for a Japanese girl because I was inexperienced. I was a foreigner, so I seemed like foreign and
Yeah.
special and tough. And she had a couple of fights, so they were probably hoping that she would beat me up, but it would be an exciting fight for the fans, right?
Hmm.
That's what they do. They set up foreigners. I don't think my sensei thought that. I think that he just told the promotion, "Hey, we have some foreign girl who wants to fight someday." And then they just offered it. So I don't think that he was setting me up. I think that,
Yeah.
honestly.
The promotion, you know, I was a matchmaker too, and you do when you select an opponent with like an international opponent. Now there is a different gravity to the fight,
Hometown
and
girl, that's fine. I don't mind.
yeah, and they're gonna you know consider it motivational for her as well. Especially if they think she has some. But that's the thing is, you don't just do this for the average person. They probably thought she had some potential, and this would be a stepping stone for her.
Right.
What'd you think of her? What was the fight like? Do you remember the actual fight? Because it looks like you pulled
Yeah.
off the win.
Yeah, I got in there. I went to the venue, and then my training partner buddies who were going to corner me said, she's the daughter of a Yakuza, so if you win, you better just win and then leave. Ha 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 ha. And I'm like, what do you mean? Ha 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 ha? Like, really? Like, isn't that scary? But it was okay. So I remember I was a little in. I don't know. I've never been in a street fight. I'm very peaceful. So when she tried to like mean mug me, I just thought it was kind of funny, but I was intimidated of her family. But yeah, I went in there. I was like, I'm gonna kickbox. I'm gonna kick. I'm gonna grapple. So I got hit like 3 times, and then I just took her down and armbarred her in like under a minute.
Okay, so
Because I wasn't good at kickboxing.
okay, but you'd already. I mean, let's just say your submission game
Yeah,
trans.
I had been competing at Naga for like 4 years.
Okay, so because your submission game is, I would consider it elite, and
Yeah,
even at then you were already showing the flash, and you got her quick then.
yeah.
So what was
And
the
then I went home
reaction afterwards?
quickly.
Did you actually go home quickly?
Yeah, I did. They were like, "It's okay, Roxy." I'm like, "Hell no, I'm getting out of here." They're like, "It's fine." I'm like, "No, I'm out of here."
It probably would have been better to stay in the crowd, but yeah, I've been around Japan. Japan's actually quite safe.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah,
so yeah, it was a whole mind game. I think that they were playing with you there. But
probably.
okay, so you got your first one under. Did you call home? Did you tell mom you won? Did you tell your parents, or was that not something going on?
No, I probably told them, yeah, I won my competition.
Okay, yeah, yeah. Oh, that's right. The first three they didn't even know about. They didn't know what you were doing up there. Very interesting. Very interesting. So, what was the reaction at the gym? Now, did the sensei decide like, okay, maybe we have something here. Maybe treat you different, up to training a little bit?
I don't remember too well, but I don't think anyone treated me different. Like throughout my whole career, I don't feel like I've ever been treated as an elite athlete. I always felt like I was just one of the guys. I was always struggling. Like even later in my career, like I never like walked in and had people say, "Hey, how's it go? How are you? Like, do you feel well? Like, have some water." Like I never got that, which is kind of a shame because I thought that like top 10 or top 5 fighters were supposed to get
Yeah.
that. I never got that, but I'm humble and I don't care anyway, so it was fine. But no one treated me different. Actually, the Muay Thai coach like babied me, and I was pissed off because he never wanted to hit me, or he always had me sit out if there was an odd person. So I was kind of mad at him. But
Okay. And did you ever have to go through clean the gym, cook for another fighter, stuff that went on
no,
in
they didn't
Pancrase
do
among the
that.
men? No, no.
No, we
Okay.
didn't do that.
Okay. Cool. So, well, you're over there. You're going to school as well in Japan, right? Because you
At
said it
that
was
time, yes.
okay. So, what was that like? I mean, how are the classes in Japanese, or were you already fluent in Jap? Doesn't
It was hard. It was really hard. There were classes in English. That university, the International Christian University, it had a lot of foreigners, so they had specific classes in English. And then I would take a Japanese language class, which taught me the language.
Okay.
So that class, of course, had Japanese language classes, uh, what is it? Subject classes in Japanese for Japanese students, and then other subject classes in English for foreign students. So those are the ones that I took.
Okay. Cool. And your Japanese was coming along, which
It was
I
intermediate, a good strong intermediate. Like I could talk my way out of a paper bag, but I still struggled.
yeah. No. So had you taken classes in the States also before?
Yeah.
Okay. So you were semi prepared. Um, who's got a very similar story along those lines is Ryan Bowe. I don't know if you've ever come
Yep, I know
across Ryan,
him.
and Ryan's another guy that you know found himself living in Japan and pursuing it, and now speaks Japanese at a high level for for an American. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
I don't know if you're ready. How do you feel? Are you ready to write Japanese poetry? And you know, I've heard that. Do you write it too?
I do. Lately, I've kind of been letting myself go. Like I made such a big effort to keep up with it even after I came back to America. But then it's like, well, I have other things I could be doing. I'm never using it. Like it's actually that's I'm kind of mad at myself for letting myself go. I haven't practiced in months.
Because
So
I was told by Shu that you could probably get by with about 2 or 3 thousand of the characters.
yeah.
Is what the common person would normally do. But you could be extensive like a literature or things like that. You might need to know 6 or 7 thousand characters,
Yep,
and
accurate.
that's completely mind blowing to an American. You know what I mean? And so, it, just the level that you've attained is shows a cerebral side that I'm not sure every single fighter on the planet could do what you did. Especially that adjustment. So that's big time. And my hat's off to you because you're pursuing it and you're fighting MMA at a high level. Now comes this GCM tournament. It was, I believe, the second fight while you were over there as a student, and you fight actually another veteran of the scene here,
Tama-chan?
Tamachan, Kaiko Tama, I believe is
Yep.
her real name.
Yep.
Um, what was that experience like? Because you guys were at that point you were both very young, and you'd run into each other later as at least at shows if you didn't have a rematch in the future. So
Yep.
how did this come about? What was this like? What was your memory of this fight?
It was easier than I thought. Like I was able to get mount a lot and I hit her a bunch. Um, I was nervous, but yeah, I won the fight unanimously.
Yeah, unanimous decision, 2 rounds. Now, what were these shows like? Where were they? Like what type of venue or
I think it was in a night, either a nightclub or
because
yeah, I think that one was in a night. Shinjuku Face was it or
Shinjuku
something?
Face? That's what I was going to say.
Yeah,
That
some
was a
night, I
popular
guess.
one that
Yeah,
was there, and that means that's a venue of about 600 people.
yeah.
Okay, so that's cozy. How does that feel? How was the audience? Because it's very quiet now in America. Even at the grappling tournaments, you probably used to the rah rah Americans and stuff. Was the audience weird, or I think your personality you adjust. You kind of go with the flow. It didn't bother you or anything, did it?
I didn't really pay attention. I couldn't. I mean, of course, I knew they were, quieter. They didn't catcall. They, cheered during certain times. But yeah.
Were you at this point already like being stopped for autographs because they very much see the fighters as you know kind of like manga characters, So were you already doing autographs and stuff like that? Because that's something that in the UFC, when you finally got there, you probably, benefited from the experience.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't remember if they wanted autographs yet. Probably not, or just maybe one, but not a lot.
Okay. Okay. That's fascinating. So Tama-chan, we'll get back to her. I do. We had her down in Costa Rica in Bodog, and her and Yabushita are among the funniest and best people I've met in the sport,
Miguel,
especially
I have
from over
50
there.
fights, right? Are we gonna go through all my 50 fights?
Well, let's get to Jennifer Howe here and then we'll skip a few.
Okay.
Okay. Now, so you had the third fight in Japan at SmackDown. Now that's in May, and May obviously the school year ends. So now you're going back to the United States. You haven't fought in the U.S. in MMA yet, and you get the long end of Jennifer Howe, which 3-0 in Japan. I could see why they thought, oh, let's do that. But Jennifer Howe would have probably been the number one girl in the world, probably in MMA at that time. So how was that fight presented to you? What was going on there? And this was in hook and shoot, so I guess we did this to you.
Jeff, yeah. I wanted to fight and I didn't know how to go get one. And so I was reading the underground forum, and I saw, what is it? Jennifer Howe's opponent dropped out. Who wants to fight her? And I was like, me, why not? We didn't really have research then. Like people didn't just Google or YouTube fights. Like that wasn't a thing back then. So I don't remember even looking her up. I didn't know who she was. I didn't know her record. I just knew that someone said that there was a fight, and I was like, me.
Yeah,
And
and
then I
that's
remember Jeff saying, "Are you sure?" I'm like, "Why wouldn't I be sure?"
yeah.
And Kirik was like, "No, you're not fighting her." And I'm like, "Why not? I'm going." So he didn't even come with me.
Well, that's the amazing thing is, because you have this happy warrior personality and stuff, you were underestimated a lot because that fire of taking a fight like that, like, even when people are telling you maybe you shouldn't or maybe you should think about it, that's a real competitor. Do you consider yourself like that's kind of eye of the tiger stuff, Or does that burn inside of you, kind of contrary to the happy warrior outside? What do you think of that? Why wouldn't you listen to your coach and avoid fighting Jennifer Howe, who was um a UPS worker, which means like she has a back and muscles and knockout power and very intimidating back in the day, you know. So why wouldn't you listen to him, or why would you go contrary to the advice you were getting? That's got to be the
Well,
competitor in you.
number one, my grappling, I'm confident in my grappling. Number two, I was 22, so I thought I was invincible.
Okay.
Number three, I was probably very naive. I am and was naive, so I didn't know any better and ignorant. So I was like, I can, and I knew that, if I just powered up enough, my key energy would come out and I would blast her away,
Okay.
Dragon Ball Z style. That was what I
Okay.
thought.
Now that's yeah, no, the power of the mind. It's impressive because a lot of people would get intimidated, and say, okay, now you go into it with a doubt. But I think that's one of the number one things that separates the top shelf fighters from, the mid
Well,
range ones is that ability to always think I can win.
Well, I never thought there was an option. I didn't know that you could decline a fight. I thought, well, if you want to fight, then fight. Like, what is there? There's no question. Like, there's a fight offer, you fight. I didn't think there was any other option.
Okay, so talk about walking in and seeing Jennifer, and because Jennifer came with a team of guys and also played that intimidation game. I don't think she went up to you and shook hands and was like, hey, it's going to be a great competition. I'm glad to meet you. We'll have a drink afterwards, because she might have mean mugged you, or, you know, she had a complete game that way, like a la the way the guys do it. So talk
Yeah.
about that experience of meeting her before the fight, the weigh-ins and
We,
stuff.
we met at weigh-ins. I am very oblivious, so Kirik told me that she was mean mugging me. I couldn't tell the difference because I don't know any better. I just was like, I'm here to weigh in with my sweatshirt on because I didn't cut weight. Um, that was it. Like I didn't really notice. I was just so excited for the fight.
And
Kirik was the one who was like, "Yeah, she's mean mugging you." I was like, "Okay, whatever."
that's really funny because when you mean mug somebody and it has zero effect on them, you may have done it back to her. You know what I mean? It's in terms of gotten her at her own game. It's like by not even noticing. Very,
I'm
very
pretty sure I
fascinating.
smiled and waved.
Wow. Awesome, awesome. So, um, talk about that fight because it's kind of a legendary fight. If you're a fan of Roxanne from the UFC days, or afterwards, because I know she has a great following. Um, and you haven't seen this fight, it's a 3 round, 5 minute. So it's 15 minutes, like a full UFC level fight against the best girl in the world there. And she hit you a few times. You probably got hit more in this fight than you did in Japan. In all of the other 3 fights combined.
Well,
So,
maybe.
so what do you remember about going through that? Because at the end of the day, you got your hand raised, and what was it? Talk about the fight from your perspective.
It's always kind of blurry so the striking aspect is always kind of unclear for me until we get to the ground, and then everything like is sharp and in focus. It's kind of like a camera lens. So when I'm striking, I'm just like, not now, but in the past, I used to, be very blurry. So I don't even know what happened stand up, and it looked pretty awful. I was trying to like lead with kicks and like lean back, and it was just awful. But then I finally got it to the ground, which is what I knew the best. So once that happened, then I was all set. So my goal is basically to try to hit her enough to close the distance and then take her down. And I had success at that. So that's what I remember.
And the fight went your way. Now, I've talked to Monty Cox about this fight. I've talked to Jennifer Howe about this fight. And they were like, okay, they wanted a rematch. And they were like, they were confident. And I'll tell you, after you do the rematch, what happened, their reaction from both of them. But they wanted a rematch because they were confident, okay, she's not going to do that to me again. So what was your thinking about it? And a lot of the times when you've gotten a victory like this, offering a rematch is something, they would have to kind of earn it, and you kind of gave them the rematch and stuff. Is that just that naiveness again, or what were your
Well, I wanted
thoughts
to
on going
fight
in?
and they gave me a fight. I was like, okay, like what choice did I have in my mind? Like that's a fight. You got to say yes. Like I always say yes.
So because you went back to Smack Girl for a couple of fights before you rematched her.
Oh yeah, that's right, the tournament.
There was it looks like they were two fights in one day,
Yep.
and now this is you won the first fight, Anna Carolina, who I'm going to assume is a Brazilian girl. And then you fought Megumi Yabushita, and you said you
Hmm.
came from a judo background. Now you're talking about a more or less world class judo level fighter with a lot of experience, and also a little bit of a mean streak and stuff like that. And you take your first loss with Yabushita. Talk about what you remember of that fight as a learning experience, because there's no shame in losing to Megumi Yabushita.
I honestly didn't think I lost. I didn't feel like I lost. I didn't feel like I got beat up. So I felt really unsatisfied after that. And like maybe the judges might have given it to her because she was Japanese.
Okay.
But I've never seen the footage, so I don't remember at all what happened.
Okay. Okay. But you remember feeling like, yeah, I was in that fight. It wasn't a walkover or anything like that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So now no one can deny you're early on in your career, and you are already competing at a very, very high level. You got a win over Jennifer Howe, what we'll call questionable loss to Yabushita, but those are two of the top people back in the day here. Now you come back to the United States, IFC. Now is the Jennifer Howe rematch. And this is one, like I said, they wanted. You walk into it. Do you remember the second fight? Do you remember what happened?
I do remember that one better.
Okay, tell us.
We pummeled each other a great deal on the
Mhm.
feet. And then I took her down a couple times, and that's how I was able to score my points. And then I finally tapped her out in the third round with the triangle.
Okay, so she wanted the rematch, and you actually went from a decision to a submission. So like it's actually like you were getting better, and closing the gap on or extending your lead over some of the top people in the world. Did you have that sensation now? Or where's your confidence level at this point in terms of what you're thinking of? Because people got to be telling you. And I'll tell you, Monty and Jennifer Howe were like, after the first fight, they were like, "No, we'll beat her next time. There's no way she beats us." And after you beat her a second time, they were like, "I don't think I could ever beat her."
Oh yeah, wow.
Yeah, that's what that's what Monty actually said in his interview, and Jennifer concurred with that. So,
Well,
um, very much they had incredible respect for you. Did you have any of those feelings going on? Like, how's your confidence level at this time? What are people telling you? Because they gotta be telling you, hey, you know, you're entering the elite if not already there.
I didn't really, I don't know. I just was happy that I won, and I was just taking it fight by fight. This wasn't really like a career. There was no path. It was just fight by fight. Like, hey, you want to fight? Yes. Okay, it's done. There was no like, this is elite, this is amateur, this is how you do it, this is how it's supposed to go. Like, there was none of that back then. It was like a hobby. Here, go for this one fight. I was like, okay. So that was it.
Okay, so now big stuff there. Now, moving on, you took precisely 2 weeks off and then came to Ring of Combat to fight Laura de August.
That was a mistake. I shouldn't have done that. I
And
felt so flat in that fight, so flat. And that was the girl I wanted to beat the most because I'd been fighting her a lot in the Naga tournaments and we'd go back and forth with winning. No, I think she usually won. A couple times I won, but she usually won. And I was like, I want to beat her in MMA. And then when they offered me the fight 2 weeks after Jennifer Howe, I was like, man, that's so close. But hey, they offered me the fight. I should take it. So of course I took it.
okay, and it didn't go your way, but another decision. So and you'd already known her, so definitely a real competitor, taking that fight. Then you took a year off and you returned to fight Tara LaRosa, who was up by this time. Now we're in March of 2006. By this time, Tara was already starting to head up the ladder as well as one of the elite girls. What do you remember about fighting her? And it looks like it was in Atlantic City for my show.
Yep. The taking a year off was not for lack of trying. Of course, I wanted to fight as much as possible, but the Japanese don't have a lot of girls my weight. And then it cost a lot of money to bring me in from Japan. So it was just hard to get a match. So I was just really happy to get the offer, to fight Tara.
Okay, so you were already living in Japan and established over there in terms of, your apartment and stuff like that.
Yep.
Cool. Okay. So now Tara, no shame in that loss. And then you go back to Japan and in a couple months there, you get the Yabushita rematch and you get revenge, so to speak, in Jishudo.
That felt great.
And talk about politics for that fight. Is it why would you spend a year in Japan not fighting? Is it something that they weren't giving you a fight because you'd already kind of established yourself as pretty good? What are your thoughts on why they made you sit all that time?
I think it was just a hard time finding opponents. Like I was 135 pounds. Most of their girls are 115, 105, like just small girls. So
Okay.
it was hard to find a match. So
Okay.
that's what
Now
they told me.
the next fight was in Japan, but it was once again one that I made. And this was one that I think came as a little bit of a surprise, because you're the submission expert, but
Oh, Bodog.
Shayna got you. We will just say it that way.
I was
Now,
surprised.
what do you remember about this fight?
I remember being very surprised at what I couldn't believe I tapped out. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm tapping out. Oh no, but I'm supposed to be the submission artist. But it was cool. It was like, all right, that was a cool submission. I can't be mad. I was a little mad, but and she was pretty cool. We had a lot in common, so we hung out.
Yeah, I remember a funny story. First, when I interviewed Shayna, Shayna said that was her absolute, and she's been to, what she's doing now, and she's been to Japan many times and stuff, and she said that was her absolutely favorite trip. And I remember we all went out to eat afterwards,
Yep.
and I love sushi and stuff like that, and sashimi and things like that. So we're eating, and sashimi is raw fish without the rice. Is for the people that may not know. And they bring something out, and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, this is suspect. I'm not sure here. Like, what is that? And they say ba sashimi. Now,
Oh,
tell people what that is.
raw horse meat.
Yeah, raw horse meat. So I avoided it. Now, did you try it? Do you
Hell
remember?
no. My meat Star Wars. No, I'm American. We don't do
Yeah.
that.
Well, Shayna did, but
Did she?
yeah, yeah. So people are adventurous, but yeah, they go with we went with the horse meat. We had a nice little adventure there. That was one of the Bodog's secret fights too. So that was in Shinjuku Face in front of like 300 or 400 people, and yeah, it was a great experience. We filmed with you. We went to your work. We saw you teaching kids English and stuff like that. And
Did you guys like show that on the program?
I'm pretty sure that they did as a preview to the fight, but I didn't see the programs.
Okay.
Because I'd already moved to Costa Rica, so um yeah, it wasn't something I was able to see on cable, but okay, but that's a lot of fun. And now again with Shayna, it's a feather in your cap because the number of legendary girls that you've fought in the early days of your career is starting to add up. Baszler, Yabushita a couple of times, LaRosa, Howe, even Tamachan, who extended her career, to 40 something fights and stuff like that. A lot of quality there. So it's not like anybody could say, oh, in the early days, she got by on average competition. You were always seeking out big stuff there. So let's see here. Now, you stayed in Japan for how long? When did you come back?
2013.
Okay. Now let's go through this here. Eventually you fight on the show called Asian Invasion. You went 5 2-minute rounds with Cassandra Rivers. You fought in something called K1 Grace. This looks like it was another tournament, and it winds up with what I would consider another huge feather in your cap. You won this is an 8-man tournament, or 8-woman tournament rather. Sorry about that. Including the rubber match with Yabushita, which you took the victory in, and now you run into another absolute living legend, and that's who I have also interviewed. Actually, is Marlos Conan. And
Yep.
talk about the Marlos Conan fight, because of all the women that you beat up to this point, and many of them, even Jennifer, Marlos might be the most decorated, and
Yep.
also
Yep.
similar to you, the most ultra dedicated of the MMA fighters from the early days. And she went on to have like a second career at Bellator, and with some of the other promotions where she became a champion again after that. And she had the legendary fight in Japan where she defeated Becky Levi.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what do you remember about facing Marlos and another wonderful woman, where it's like I could see you guys being friends after the fight as
I
well?
like
But
her. We were.
what do you remember about fighting her, because she's cream of the crop?
I remember thinking, oh my gosh, she's very large.
That's true.
um, and we fought, and I did well. I was able to get her on the ground. I was able to score my points and dominate. She later made a comment that I read somewhere that she was tired from her other matches, which I think is the case, because she fought like two other really big girls that were her size and like really big. So, and I submitted my first girl not quickly, but like in the first round, I think, and then Yabushita was, a challenge, but I wasn't exhausted,
Mhm.
So I think I had the fortune smile on me for that one, but I still fought hard and pulled off the victory
Sure. No, I mean,
at the tournament.
even tired, she's going to be a threat if you're not together. And the fact is um you've already put together enough that you can compete with anybody at this point. Your name's on everybody's radar as one of the top women in MMA, and this is way back in 2007. Now, let's before we skip through a few fights here, because the next fight was Vanessa Porto, who's another big tough name. And then you're gonna get a Marlos Conan rematch. But when do you remember hearing the name Ronda Rousey?
Um, I think I was living in Japan and I was bummed because I wanted to be the first female to fight in the UFC, and then she got that honor. So I
Okay.
forget what year, but it was
Oh,
her and Liz Carmouche.
yeah, Liz kind of was a California fighter, but Ronda was the kind of person with all the heat in that fight. Actually, she had the UFC title before she was given the UFC title, before she even fought. If you remember that the circumstances leading up to her fight. Now, Ronda was kind of a polarizing figure because of her personality and stuff like that. Um, she kind of rubbed fighters like yourself, like I know Tara, and people from the older days. Like, did you feel like she didn't pay her dues the way you did? Because at this point, you're already at coming up on 15 fights or so. So, did you feel like she didn't pay her dues? Was there some animosity? Like I know you're the happy warrior, and it's not quite your style to hate on people, but did she rub you the wrong way at some point?
Um, I never really blamed her for her opportunity, like she was offered a fight and she took it. And then I knew she was a decorated judoka. So I didn't really, she didn't really rub me the wrong way. I just wished it were me.
Okay. All right, that's nice. No, it's like I said, I didn't expect anything not nice from you though. Tara, there was some hate on her though in the early days, and then obviously, um, she did put the female divisions kind of on her back and carry them to a new level. So, she earned respect that way. And then, and when a lot of people met her, but in the early days, there was some of that animosity. Now, let's jump forward here. November 2009 in Strikeforce. Now you're back in the United States, and this is a big show where Fedor fought Rogers in the main event. And you're back in the U.S. for Strikeforce, and you get a Merlos Conan rematch.
I've had a
And
lot of rematches.
what was that?
I've had a lot of rematches.
Yeah, and again, that's where don't sleep on Roxanne Modafferi as a competitor because she's got this veneer or this what she shows is this kind of happy-go-lucky face, because at the end of the day, she has the eye of the tiger, that stuff. A lot of people don't give rematches so easily, but I get the sense from you that it's like, hey, you feel like you're gonna win every fight, and that's a very interesting thing for an athlete, because once you start doubting yourself that way, yeah, you could lose the fight before you even get into it. Now, talk about the Merlos rematch, because this one didn't quite go your way, and you got again, you've lost some fights, but you've lost decisions. Shayna got you. I think that was the first time you tapped out. Now, Merlos also was known for her ground game, so you're the ground whiz, but Merlos kind of also had that reputation. So talk about this fight and how you remember it, how you uh analyze it
I
now.
don't I don't really remember it. I've never been able to watch the video. I don't know if there is video. I just remember tapping out to an armbar, and I was very sad because again, I'm not supposed to get submitted. That's my thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh man, it didn't even last like more than a minute. Like it was the biggest. I'd been dying to get on the Strike Force forever, and I only got this opportunity because was it Cyborg or somebody else was sick or something. So I got this opportunity, and I went up a weight class, and I was just so bummed. That was my big chance, and it wasn't even a minute long. I didn't get to show anything. I just friggin' tapped out, so I was pretty depressed.
And now the other times that you've done a rematch, it was like you took a loss to Yabushita, and then you cleaned up, and you had beaten Merlos. Now, and she did go through the tournament, maybe said she was tired and stuff like that. But what was your confidence level going into that fight? And did this affect your confidence, or were you ready to get on the bike, again right away? What was your mindset after taking this loss? Because she's great, but again, losing quickly like that, that could tap the mind a little bit.
You mean after the fight, how was my confidence?
Yeah.
Well, I always go back to the gym and I train and I try to put as much distance between the loser me and the make a new me. I want to make a new me that's better so that I can say like, oh, that me that lost is no longer existing. My next fight is gonna be different because I'm better now.
Okay.
So I always have confidence when I go into another fight.
That's very impressive. Now, uh, then you bounce back with a win about 2-3 months later. Okay, so you're taking a loss to Tara LaRosa, and now you get a rematch with Tara, and another feather in your cap. You got the win back. This is May of
Oh,
2010.
I was so happy about that one.
What was Moosin like? What was going on with the show, and how was your interactions with Tara? Because I know you're friends also.
Yeah, we were friends. Moosin was great. It was a new promotion, and they're making a big deal out of it, and it was a good experience. They treated us well, and it was cool because I had kept in touch with Tara. We were kind of friends, but we still threw down.
Okay. Now moving forward here, we'll skip. You went back to Strikeforce and fought Sarah Kaufman, another tough fight, and then you fought Rosie Sexton, a British fighter. Was that Cage Warriors? Was that in London? Did you
Yep,
fight?
yep.
So talk about that trip a little bit.
Oh, that was such a fun trip. I loved going to London. I was so excited. I made a map of places to go sightseeing. In hindsight, you're not really supposed to go everywhere the day before weigh-in. You're supposed to be relaxing and cutting weight. I didn't do it well. I think I drained myself. I was so sleepy on the day of the fight because I didn't drink coffee and I didn't know that caffeine pills existed, so I was so tired. I really didn't perform the way I would have liked to, but it was a good trip. I didn't like the fight, but it was a good trip.
And again, you took a loss, but losing this Rosie Sexton is no shame because she's excellent also, and another extremely cerebral fighter too. So I'm sure
Even
that.
if I was at my top of my form, I might have still lost to her. So I can't be mad or really just chalk it up to being tired. So it was a good fight.
Were you living in the States at this point again already?
Nope, I think I was still in Japan.
Okay, now you went back to Japan. You fought Hitomi Akano, who was also very good, and then Takayo Hashi. Um, and at that point,
Oh yeah, that was my losing streak. I had a huge losing streak.
yeah, there was a losing streak in there. But at that point, you get this call that talks about going to the Ultimate Fighter.
I didn't
So
get no call. I applied.
is that how it was? Okay,
Oh
so tell me
yeah, I
about the
applied.
application process and how was the tryouts and when you got selected, how did that feel?
It was awesome. Someone on Twitter linked to me and said, "Hey, are you going to the tryouts for Tough?" And I was like, "What? They don't have women." So I looked it up. Oh my God, they're having women, right? For the first time. So yeah, the website said just come, send in your paperwork and come. So I got time off from work, booked my ticket. I went and I got selected to be on the show. It was so awesome.
And so you lived in Vegas for a couple of weeks while they filmed and did the whole thing that way.
I The tryouts was 1 week, so then I went back to Japan, continued my job, and then I got the call. Then that is when I got the call after tryouts, like, "Hey, you got selected." Well, the email rather. Then I had to take the whole 6 weeks or whatever off, and then go back to the States again.
Okay, cool, cool. Now you fought on the UFC finale of the show against Raquel Pennington, and you took a
Hmm.
loss. So then that turns into you having to go to the Invicta circuit and go, get some wins before the UFC invites you back. Now things went well for you in Invicta. You got another win over Tara. Uh,
Invicta was great. I'm glad I had the opportunity to fight with them. I think I would have done poorly as I was if I had won my UFC debut in the 135-pound division because I'm small. Like that wouldn't have been good for me, I think. But as it was, I had the chance to fight in Invicta, get my skill up, and then when the UFC finally made the 125-pound division, I had that opportunity.
and that's what you went back to the Ultimate Fighter TV show for season 20. So you were on season 18, now season 26 takes you back to the UFC, and you had already was the first experience. Was it good to have it under your belt? Like you knew what was going to happen? Did the
Yes,
experience serve you well?
it did. It was tough, but then the second experience was much better.
Okay, so you enjoyed it. You enjoyed the house, or do you enjoy the
Second
interaction?
time.
Okay,
Second time I did.
okay, okay, cool. And it's the same thing that the guys talk about. You're not allowed to communicate on the internet. You're not allowed to look at newspapers or anything like that. Is that still what the mode of that was?
That wasn't even that bad. I just wanted music. Like we weren't allowed to have music, and that was what killed me.
Okay, wow. They don't even let you play music. Wow, that's very interesting. So now you get through the UFC now on the Ultimate Fighter finale, uh, 26, and then did you do a third season of the Ultimate Fighter on 27 as well, or were you just on the finale of that show?
Just the finale of that show.
Okay, so now the UFC, you're on their radar, and that's a good thing because that's where the rest of your career was. Now, talk about your first official big UFC, which is UFC 230, Daniel Cormier against Lewis in the main event. You fought Sajara
Hang
Eubank.
on, just a second.
Yep.
I fought Nico for the title as the finale of Tough 26.
Okay, Nico Montana. I do
And
remember
that
that.
was for the title because Sajara Eubanks beat me, but she couldn't make weight. So they called me at like 5 a.m. or 2 a.m. and said, "Hey, do you want to fight for the title?" And I was like, "Of course I want to fight for the title, right? Always say yes." So after I unfortunately lost that fight, they still signed me because it was, I took the fight last minute. It was a title fight. They still signed me. Um,
Okay, so you got
then I was
decent
officially
treatment.
signed after I lost that fight. And then I was able to continue.
Okay, but that's good treatment, and that's them. At times they don't treat people fair all the time. But that's fair treatment for you. You did them
Yeah.
a favor, and they got you back and stuff. But how was that first UFC pay per view, the 230, where you fought Sajara? Was that intimidating? Because now Shinjuku faces a 500 seat arena. Hook and shoot was smaller. Strike Force was starting to get bigger and stuff. But now the UFC at this point, 230 is a machine. Was it intimidating? Was the whole UFC experience like you knew you'd made it to the big time?
I would say it wasn't intimidating, but it was a big deal and it was cool. Like I realized how big a deal it was and I was really excited for the opportunity.
Okay. Now, how many UFC fights did you wind up with at the end of your career here?
Was it 11? Because
Okay.
I had 2 contracts. So I think it was like 10 or 11. 10 maybe.
Okay. That's pretty awesome. Now, um, and you shared the card with a lot of famous people. Like UFC 246, you actually were on uh a show where you got to win with Macy Barber. But what
Yup.
I want to ask you about is the Conor McGregor experience. Was he someone that you were aware of that was on the card, or were you able to stay in your own bubble and because he's kind of he's become a bigger than life personality. So talk about that and see, maybe share a Conor story with us.
Yeah, he was in the locker room next to mine. So they had, in oh, I forgot. Well, that was the T-Mobile Arena, right? So they had different locker rooms. It was way nicer than the way it used to be, right?
Mhm.
We had different locker rooms, and then I remember I had to go through his to get to the bathroom, and I remember seeing him like warming up and like wrapping his hands and stuff, and all these people around him like taking care of him. I was like, "Oh my God, it's Conor McGregor!" and run to the bathroom. That's pretty much it.
That's funny though, because yeah, he was fighting Cerrone, so at this point he was already kind of, we could say, at the peak of his powers, kind of thing. He'd already broke it out into being a big star.
My
Um,
team was pro Cerrone, so we didn't really. We're like, "Nyeh."
good, you didn't buy into that. I was pro Cerrone too. I still would be pro Cerrone in that one. Um, one of the other fights I want to ask you about is you got a win over Antonia Shevchenko, who is the sister of you know the champion that they have, who's on the top end, complete top shelf fighter. What was that feeling like? Because, sometimes the sister has a lot of weight to carry and stuff like that, because of who her family member is. But did you feel pressure about that? Because, they probably had high expectations for Antonina.
The only pressure I felt was actually going to Russia. That made me nervous. But I didn't really I'm not a really scared of fighters. Like fighters don't intimidate me, my fellow fighters, because I'm there. I fought all these people that you had just mentioned, right? So I'm not really afraid of anybody. So I didn't care about the hype or any of that. And of course, she's not her sister, so I didn't even expect her to be anything like her sister, the champion, right?
Hmm.
Um, so I just remember that was a good fight because my coach said, all right, she's going to do this, so you have to do this. And I said, okay. And that's exactly what happened. She did exactly what my coach said she would do. And then I did what he said I should do, and I won the fight. So it was like beautiful game plan.
And with Macy Barber, she had kind of that hype train being called the future and stuff like that too. So did you feel like you had a position of elder statesperson at this point where it's like you had a, I don't want to say door person, you know what I mean? But you like you got to beat Roxanne to get to the top level at this point. Did you have that feeling where like you were gonna have to block these girls a little bit, that they had too much
Oh,
hype?
yeah. Oh, yeah. I know that I'm always underestimated. I'm just the little cute, weak looking girl who's not intimidating. And, they wanted her to smash me probably. But I was like, okay, whatever. I'm going to beat her. I've beat a bunch of undefeated fighters. So that was just another task. I always say yes to fights.
And so now towards the end of your career here with the UFC, you're older now. You're over 35 and still fighting. So you extended your career, like I said, a lot longer than many of the people from the early days. That in itself is an accomplishment. How did you feel with going out in with the UFC and not having to, go back to a lower level of fights and stuff to keep it going or to make money and stuff like that? Do you feel like you've accomplished something that is unique and that your place in history is firm? Because I would describe it as firm, as elite, as all that. Like you're all that.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really proud of myself. I wish I could have won my last fight. I did think I won, but it's okay. Um, I'm glad that I was able to hang in there, you know, um, until I think I was 39 when I had my last fight.
Yep.
And I always thought that fighters retired when they were 35. They'd just be so beat up that they couldn't go anymore because that's what it used to be like. So I was pretty happy that I was able to keep going until that age and had the opportunities with the UFC. I was able to retire from the UFC rather than be cut and then try to look for a fight somewhere else. So that was a great honor.
Yeah, for sure, and it's notable. It should be something that is considered a feather in your cap as well. Now, fighting at 39, though, did you feel after that and having lost a fight, even though you thought you won, did you feel it was the right time to retire, or was your contract up? Or would you have fought again if the UFC had kept you on? Because maybe the body, or was your body sending you a message that, hey, I'm getting pretty close to it?
My body was actually in the best shape of my life. Like I had a bunch of chronic issues, but due to my great strength trainer Lorenzo, my neck healed, my back healed. Like I felt awesome, except for my brain. I kept getting hit a lot, and I mean, when I got hit, I got rocked in practice. I felt like a lot of the people, we had some new team members come in and they were trying to like take my head off. And I'm like, man, I'm too old for these chicks trying to take my head off. Um, I was getting like minor concussions in the gym. And I was like, man, if this is the way it's going to be from now on, like I'm out. So I told myself, all right, I'll do one more fight camp. Um, I don't really think I told my training partners this. Did I tell them? I pretty much asked them to hit me lighter, and then when they wouldn't, I basically changed all my training partners and started training with the guys because they have no ego. They don't care about hitting a girl. They'll work with me. So I trained with a bunch of guys and then another one new girl for my last fight. I brought in Lauren Murphy. She helped me train for my last fight, and Deanna Bennett because we fought each other and we made friends, and I knew they wouldn't have any ego about trying to hurt me, and they helped me a lot in my last fight camp. So I had to be very careful with my brain. I was trying to be careful, but I knew that was the last fight. Like I just wanted to get it done and retire
Okay, well,
for my
you
health.
rode off into the sunset, and with the happy warrior personality too, you kind of became like a little bit of a media star too at the towards the end of your career. Like you were, just not just there's women fights on there, and some of them, with a 700 person roster, some of the fighters still remain anonymous, but you became a little bit you famous. How did that aspect of it feel? Especially because you tend to be, I would describe you as kind of shy, especially in the early days and stuff. And I, back then, I don't think you ever thought that you'd be a big media star. So talk about that aspect here as we try to wrap up.
Well, thank you. I still don't really feel like I'm as big a star as certain people, but I'm glad that what is it the what is the phrase? The common man's hero, the grassroots hero, or what? I
Yeah,
forgot the term for
the
that.
people's hero, the people's
People,
champion.
yeah, the people's person. Like,
Yeah.
so I get a lot of messages just from other people who train jujitsu or fans, and it's just really cool to have them acknowledge that I made a difference to them, and it's just been really cool. I never thought that. I always feel honored and almost surprised when people tell me that.
Now, so you've been retired for 2 years, and this will be the last question. I'll let you go because I know family calls and things like that. And I'm so appreciative of the time, Roxanne. You have no idea how happy I am that I haven't done an interview in a couple of months, and I'm so glad that you were the first one back because definitely worth the time and definitely worth catching up. So I asked you about Japan and maybe signing autographs and stuff like that in the early days because the Japanese audience and stuff. So when was the last time you were actually recognized, at Walmart or out in the street somewhere?
Yes, it was recently. Let's see, what was it? I think I was in Cactus Joe's Cactus Gardens walking around with my husband looking at cacti.
Okay.
And then some person walks up to me and goes, "Hey, I loved your fight, man," and just fist bumped me. It was
Okay.
nice. It's nice
And
not to be forgotten, you know?
so you enjoy that. You enjoy that.
It's awesome.
Cool, cool. You deserve everything, every happy moment, every happy memory. You do deserve it because, like I said at the honestly of the interview, on the men's side, on the women's side, it doesn't matter. I can't think of too many people that rate up there with the level of dedication and uh, giving it your all kind of thing that you did to this sport, and that goes down in history, Roxanne. Thank you so much for everything. Okay. And thank
Thank
you
you,
for letting
Miguel.
us watch you. Thank you for letting us enjoy it. And I'm
Thank
glad
you
I
for
was a little
watching.
part of it. Great. Go enjoy your day. Go enjoy your husband. I know that you're living the good life now. So we'll catch up soon. I'll send you a link when I have the interview up. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you, Miguel.
Thanks, man. Good to
Be
see you.
well too.
Bye bye.
Bye.